I let my manipulative best friend talk me into canceling my engagement. But now she is pursuing him, and when I learned the truth and tried to come back, he was already with another woman. I never thought that my life would take the course it took, or that a single decision, driven by insecurity and bad advice, could cost so much. I suppose that to understand it, one must start at the beginning. I did not grow up in one of those postcard homes. My parents, their relationship was a constant battlefield. The fights were daily, the screams were the soundtrack of my childhood, and yes, I witnessed abuse, both verbal and physical, from both of them. Growing up in such an environment marks you, it conditions you. You see love and relationships through a filter of fear, distrust, and dysfunction. You learn that couples hurt each other, that conflict is inevitable, and that affection often comes mixed with control or cruelty. When I was old enough, I went to live with my aunt and her husband. Their house was different, not perfect, of course, no relationship is, but it was healthy. There was mutual respect, communication, even in disagreements, and I saw a model of affection that was not tainted by fear. Being there helped me heal a little, to see that other ways of relating existed, but the scars of my childhood were there, burned into my psyche, shaping my perception of romantic relationships in ways that at that moment I did not fully understand. I was always, as they told me, a beautiful girl. But growing up seeing such damaging relationships and without a solidly built self-esteem gives you a distorted perspective of love and self-worth in a couple. I had wrong ideas about what was normal, about what I should expect, about how much I should trust or doubt. It made me vulnerable, although I did not know it at the time. University was an opportunity to start over, far from the shadow of my childhood home. And it was there that I met Daniel. He was different from any man I had known before. He was incredibly handsome, one of those who turn heads, but he did not seem aware of it or did not care. He was very focused on his studies, on his goals. He came from a stable and loving family, something I secretly envied. He was athletic, he played on the university basketball team. But beyond all that, Daniel was genuinely a good person. He was kind, respectful, intelligent, funny, and had an integrity that was noticeable in everything he did. At first, our relationship was one of friendship. I was attracted to him, of course. Who would not be attracted to him? But my own insecurities and my preconceived ideas about relationships made me doubt. Daniel, however, was patient. He showed me little by little what healthy love meant. He gave me security, made me feel valued for who I was, not just for how I looked. He proved to me with actions, with his consistency, with his sincere affection, that one could trust a partner's affection. He won me over with his kindness and his patience, and after a while, with a heart full of a mix of hope and a hint of fear for venturing into something so important, I agreed to be his girlfriend. The years we spent together were, in retrospect, the best of my life up to that point. Our relationship strengthened. Daniel was everything I did not think existed in a partner. He was supportive. He supported me in my studies, celebrated my small triumphs, comforted me in my frustrations. Communication was open. We could talk about almost everything. I felt safe with him, something I had never experienced before in a romantic context. Trust grew layer by layer, slowly undoing some of the fears my childhood had instilled in me. I truly believed we had built something unbreakable. However, despite the solidity of our relationship, I still had my own latent insecurities and, unfortunately for me, a friend whose influence was not exactly positive, Jessica. I met her at university and we became very close. I always turned to her for advice, although looking back, her advice rarely turned out to be good. She had a way of seeing the world and relationships with a certain cynicism, often biased by an envy that I was slow to recognize. She was a bit absorbing, always wanting to know everything about my life, sometimes seeming as if my problems or successes affected her more than they affected me, but I considered her my best friend and trusted her judgment despite the warning signs. And Jessica, perhaps driven by that silent envy of my relationship with Daniel, or perhaps simply by her own twisted view of couples, began to plant small seeds of doubt in my mind. At first, they were subtle comments, barely perceptible. One, Are you sure he was just studying when Daniel stayed late at the library? Or, and I hope he knows how lucky he is and does not forget it when other girls look at him. I did not pay much attention to them. I dismissed them as comments without real malice. But the seed was being planted, and in the fertile ground of my unresolved childhood insecurities, it would begin to take root. Things on the surface were still normal and happy with Daniel, but a small crack, invisible to him and to me at that moment, was beginning to form. Our relationship with Daniel continued to strengthen despite Jessica's initial subtle insinuations. I was genuinely happy and felt secure, something I valued enormously given my history. However, university life brought its own challenges, and for us, one of the main ones was basketball. Daniel was a fundamental part of the university team, and that meant frequent trips, away games, important tournaments, sometimes even training camps. There were periods when Daniel had to spend several days or even a week in another city with the team. Every time he left, we would say goodbye affectionately. We would talk on the phone every night. He would tell me about the games, how he was doing in training, how he was feeling. It was our way of staying connected despite the physical distance. I trusted him. I knew how dedicated he was to basketball and his studies, and the idea that he could do something to risk his future or our relationship simply did not fit with the man I knew. But these trips created the perfect opportunity for Jessica to intensify her influence. The physical distance became a metaphor for the emotional distance and the doubt she was trying to sow. Jessica was very active on social media and often saw photos that Daniel's teammates posted, photos of them going out sometimes to parties or social gatherings in the cities they traveled to. Daniel rarely appeared in those photos, or if he did, it was in an innocuous context. However, Jessica used those images as ammunition. "Look at this," she would say to me, showing me a photo of several team members at what looked like a hotel party. "The whole team is there. Do you think Daniel was in his room reading a book while his teammates were having fun? Come on, Elena, it is a college basketball team away from home. Do you know what that means?" Her insinuations were veiled, but persistent. She did not directly accuse me of being naive, but she did paint a picture of life on team trips that contrasted with the good boyfriend image that Daniel projected and that I believed. Daniel, unaware of these conversations, tried to keep me updated on his life during the trips. He would send me photos of the court, the team bus, sometimes a tired selfie from his hotel room while he was studying or watching television. They were his little ways of saying, "I am here. I am thinking of you, and I am doing what I am supposed to be doing." And at first, those photos and our nightly conversations were enough to dispel any small doubt that Jessica might plant. But Jessica was relentless. She would dismiss Daniel's photos. "Sure, he sends you the photo from the room. He is smart. He gives you an alibi. But what happens after the photo? What happens when he hangs up the phone?" She found a flaw in every attempt Daniel made to reassure me. If he was with his teammates in a photo, Jessica would suggest that who knows who they met later. If he was alone in his room, she would say he was probably just pretending to be alone for the photo. Her constant drip of distrust began to eat away at my security. I started to feel anxious every time Daniel had to travel. The excitement of his team playing well was marred by the knot in my stomach and the persistent questions in my mind. I knew Daniel, yes. I knew his character, his values, but Jessica's voice feeding my deepest fears about infidelity, fears that, without a doubt, had roots in my childhood and in those mistaken ideas about relationships, began to weigh more heavily than my own trust in him. I started to rationalize my growing distrust. Maybe, I thought, the idea that men are inherently prone to infidelity, especially when they are far away and there are opportunities, had some truth to it. Maybe I was naive to trust so much. Maybe Jessica, with her cynicism, was just being realistic and trying to protect me. This anxiety, this doubt without any real basis, led me down a dark path. I began to feel the need to look for evidence that would confirm or deny my fears. And shamefully, that need led me to violate Daniel's trust. When he returned from trips, exhausted from the games and his studies, and he would fall asleep or go to take a shower, I would take his phone. I felt a mix of guilt and adrenaline every time I did it. My heart would pound. I would navigate through his messages, his social media, looking for any clue, any conversation, any photo that would confirm the scenarios Jessica painted in my head. It was a furtive act that made me feel dirty and dishonest. And the ironic or painful thing about all of this is that I never found anything, nothing incriminating. His messages were what I expected: conversations with teammates about basketball or studies, messages from his family, or affectionate conversations with me. There was no trace of second lives, of secret flirtations, of wild parties without me. But instead of alleviating my anxiety, finding nothing often made it worse. Jessica had conditioned me so much that sometimes I would think, he is so perfect, so clean, maybe he is incredibly good at hiding it. The lack of evidence did not reaffirm my trust. It fed a paranoia that he was a master of deceit, and the simple act of searching, of doubting enough to violate his privacy, was corroding the foundation of our relationship from my side. This cycle repeated for months. Every trip Daniel took, every championship, was a new opportunity for my anxiety to flourish, fueled by Jessica's insinuations and my own lack of confidence in my judgment and in him. I was allowing an external influence to poison something beautiful and healthy, all without a single real piece of evidence that Daniel had done anything to deserve my distrust. And this silent erosion of trust would lead us to a breaking point that I myself, without realizing it, was actively building. Months after that encounter with Jessica, my work and study routine had become second nature. I kept my distance from my old social circle, concentrating all my energy on building my future. The anxiety about Daniel's trips had not completely disappeared, but it had become a background murmur in my mind, attenuated by constant exhaustion and by the fact that I had not found any proof in his things that justified my fears, which in my mental state I sometimes interpreted as him being very good at hiding it. The trust had not been fully restored, but the lack of solid evidence made my doubts seem silly, even to me. One day, Daniel surprised me. He told me he had made a reservation at a luxury restaurant in the city center, one of those places you only go to on very special occasions. He told me he had invited his family and my aunt and her husband. The magnitude of the event made me feel nervous, but also excited. I knew something important was about to happen. We arrived at the restaurant and were led to the best table in the place, in a semi-private area. The atmosphere was elegant, the lights dim, the music soft. Our families were there, all dressed for the occasion, with expectant smiles. I sat next to Daniel, feeling beautiful in the dress I had chosen, and for a moment the weight of my worries dissipated. I felt loved, appreciated, part of something important. During dinner, the conversation flowed easily between our families, uniting two worlds that were very different, but that respected each other. Daniel was radiant, more smiling than usual. We exchanged knowing glances, small gestures of affection under the table. Everything felt perfect, like a scene out of a movie. And then the moment came. Dessert had just been served. Daniel stood up from his chair, his gaze fixed on mine. I felt my heart skip a beat. The conversations died down. All eyes were on us. With a smile that lit up his face, Daniel knelt in front of me, took a small box out of his pocket, and opened it. Inside, a ring sparkled. "Elena," Daniel said, his voice clear and full of emotion. "From the moment I met you, I knew you were special. You have brought light into my life, security, joy. You have been with me through good times and bad. You are the person with whom I want to share my future, my dreams, my entire life." He looked into my eyes, and I saw in his gaze the sincerity and love he had always shown me. "Elena, will you marry me?" I was breathless. Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were of pure, overwhelming happiness. Everything I had dreamed of, everything I had longed for, that security, that unconditional love, that future. Daniel was offering it to me in front of our families in a gesture of absolute commitment. I did not hesitate for a second. With a voice trembling with emotion, I replied, "Yes, Daniel, yes, I want to marry you." The room erupted in applause and congratulations. Daniel put the ring on my finger, stood up, and hugged me tightly. We kissed, surrounded by the smiles and tears of happiness of our families. I felt on top of the world. All my fears, my doubts, my insecurities seemed small and insignificant compared to the magnitude of this moment. I had Daniel, I had his love, his commitment. We were going to get married. The future I had always longed for, a stable and loving family, was about to become a reality. Happiness flooded me, pure and unconditional. However, that night, or perhaps the next day, the serpent whispered again. Jessica called me, apparently to congratulate me. She talked about how exciting the engagement was, how handsome Daniel looked, how beautiful the ring was, but soon her tone changed, becoming that insidious murmur I knew so well. "It is amazing, Elena," she said. "So sudden, do not you think? Just now, with the season almost over." She paused significantly. "It is a way to secure things, right?" I did not understand at first what she meant. "Secure things? What do you mean?" And then she released her venom, aiming directly at the purity of my joy. "Well," she said with a casual tone that did not fool me, "you know how these trips are, these team parties. Who knows what could have happened along the way? Maybe he feels guilty about something. A ring is a good way to compensate, to make sure you stay and do not ask too many questions. A way to correct mistakes before they come to light." Jessica's words fell on my happiness like acid. Instead of flatly rejecting those toxic ideas, instead of trusting the man who had just knelt before me with tears in his eyes, I believed her. The seed of doubt she had planted for years, which I myself had watered with my anxiety and lack of trust, had grown into a poisonous tree that overshadowed my joy. It could be. It could be that Daniel was hiding something so big that the only way to silence it, to ensure my silence and my permanence, was a public and elaborate marriage proposal. The idea, once planted, clung to my insecurities with the force of a vine. The pure happiness I felt was immediately tainted with anxiety and suspicion. I looked at the ring on my finger, which before seemed a symbol of love and commitment, and now seemed like a bribe. I looked at Daniel, my fiancé, and instead of seeing the man I loved, I saw a stranger with secrets, someone who was perhaps manipulating me with the most important gesture of our lives. The trust one had fought so hard to build crumbled in that instant. Jessica's words became more real than the sincerity in Daniel's eyes during the proposal. It was a fatal mistake, dictated by my fear and the toxic influence of my friend. And this mistake, fueled by the distrust that I myself had allowed to grow, would lead me directly to dynamite my own future, just when it seemed brighter than ever. The next time Daniel had a team event, my mind would already be predisposed to see betrayal where there was only commitment. The marriage proposal should have dispelled all my doubts. It should have been the definitive proof of Daniel's love and commitment. For a while, it was. Joy overwhelmed me, and the vision of our future together felt more real and wonderful than ever. But Jessica's words, that little poisonous seed about correcting mistakes and secrets, stayed there like a splinter in my mind. Instead of being a source of pure happiness, the engagement became a new battlefield for my anxieties, fueled by my friend's insidious narrative. Every gesture from Daniel, every absence for his studies or training, every conversation I did not fully understand, I began to filter everything through the suspicion that Jessica had planted so deeply. The anxiety returned stronger than before, because now I not only feared losing him to infidelity, but I feared I had been deceived in something as sacred as a marriage proposal. Checking his phone, although I never found anything, became a furtive and shameful habit that only fed my paranoia. The lack of proof became proof that he was very good at hiding things. The end of the basketball season was approaching, and the team had a party to celebrate or say goodbye to the season. I do not remember the exact reason. Daniel told me about it. He told me it was just for the team, an informal gathering to relax after months of hard work. At any other time, I would have accepted his explanation without hesitation, but my mind was already poisoned. Jessica's words about team parties in other cities, the idea that the proposal might be a correction, all mixed together in a toxic cocktail of fear and distrust. In my head, that party was not a simple team meeting. It was an opportunity for Daniel to do something he needed to correct, to meet with someone he had secrets from. My anxiety skyrocketed. I convinced myself that this party was the key, the place where I would find confirmation of my fears, or where he would make the mistake Jessica had warned me to look for. I spent the day of the party consumed by anxiety. I could not concentrate on anything. I replayed Jessica's words, mixed them with my own insecurities about being enough, and saw scenarios of betrayal everywhere. Logic had left the building. Distrust, with no real basis, had completely taken over my judgment. As night fell, the need to confront the situation, to get a truth that I had already decided in my own mind, became overwhelming. I could not wait any longer. I do not remember exactly how it happened, or if Daniel had already returned from the party, or if I went looking for him. The emotions of that moment are a confusing whirlwind of pain and rage. What I do remember is the place. We were in a common area on campus where there were people around, though not a crowd. I approached him, my body trembling, my voice charged with all the anxiety and distrust I had been accumulating. "I know what you did," I snapped at him without preamble, without giving him a chance to speak. My words were an accusation, a sentence. He looked at me in surprise, completely caught off guard. "What? What did I do, Elena?" His confusion was genuine, but in my mental state, I interpreted it as part of his deception. "The party," I shouted, feeling tears of rage and fear welling up. "I know you cheated on me. I know you are not the man you pretend to be." Remember, for more stories like this, subscribe, like, and activate the bell. Let us continue. The accusations poured out of me like a torrent. I told him about my doubts about his trips, about the photos of his teammates, even though he was not in them, about the idea that his proposal was just to correct something. I mixed Jessica's vague insinuations with my own insecurities, presenting them as proven facts. I had no proof, of course, only the conviction fueled by my paranoia and manipulation. Daniel's expression changed from surprise to deep pain and disbelief. "Elena, what are you talking about?" he said, his voice tinged with confusion and hurt. "I have never cheated on you. How can you think that? Especially now, after the proposal." He tried to get closer to me, to touch me, to reason, but I was closed off, completely closed off. Jessica's words echoed in my head. "He is hiding something, it is to correct mistakes." I was convinced he was lying, that his denial was just part of his deception. "Do not lie to me," I shouted, my voice rising, attracting the attention of the few people nearby. The confrontation turned into a public spectacle. My uncontrolled emotions, my baseless accusations, and Daniel trying, with visible desperation, to make me see reason. "I do not want to listen to you anymore," I screamed through tears and rage. "It is over, Daniel. I cannot be with someone I cannot trust." At that moment, in a fit of pain, fear, and manipulation, I broke our engagement. I broke up with him, based on nothing more than the doubts that others had sown in me and that I had allowed to grow. Daniel was devastated. I saw it in his eyes. Tears began to roll down his cheeks as he tried again and again to make me listen. "Elena, please, do not do this," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "I love you. I have never cheated on you. Talk to me, let me explain. This is a misunderstanding." He tried to salvage the situation. He tried to save our relationship in front of everyone, but I was deaf to his pleas. I was so entangled in the web of distrust, so convinced of my own version of the facts, and invented one, by the way, that I could not see him. I publicly humiliated him, accused him of the worst, and rejected him while he offered me his love and his innocence. In the days that followed, my phone rang nonstop. The calls were from Daniel's family, I suppose horrified and confused by what had happened after the joy of the proposal. I ignored each and every one of them. I did not want to talk to them. I did not want to hear their version. In my mind, they were probably also part of the deception, or at least defending Daniel without knowing his true nature, the one I mistakenly believed I now knew. I continued to trust Jessica in her cynical wisdom about men. Daniel also tried to contact me with desperate messages and calls, begging me to give him a chance to explain, to fix things. But I completely shut down. My wounded pride, my fear of having been deceived, despite having no proof, and my blind faith in my friend's narrative prevented me from listening to the man I loved. I let him go, shattering not only his heart, but also the promise of a future I had so longed for. And the bitter, delayed regret would take months to catch up with me. The first few months after breaking up with Daniel were a roller coaster of chaotic emotions. The initial rage that led me to accuse him without grounds faded, leaving a painful void. The adrenaline of the confrontation gave way to a deep and persistent sadness. I began to miss Daniel in an unbearable way. I missed his presence, his laugh, his unconditional support, the security he made me feel. The absence of his love and our planned future left a gigantic hole in my life. Regret began to rear its ugly head. In moments of lucidity, away from Jessica's constant influence, I began to question my actions. How could I have trusted so much in my fears and in a friend's vague insinuations, and so little in the man who had shown me his love and commitment time and time again? The image of his hurt and confused face during the breakup haunted me. His genuine desperation contrasted painfully with the version of him that I had mistakenly built in my mind. Feeling bad was an understatement. I felt miserable, consumed by guilt and longing. My university life continued, but without the joy that Daniel brought to it. The places we shared became painful memories. I tried to focus on my studies, on moving forward, but the weight of my mistake made it hard to find motivation. Jessica remained close, trying to support me, bad-mouthing Daniel, reinforcing the idea that I had done the right thing by leaving such a suspicious man. But even Jessica's influence began to feel different. Her apparent support sounded more and more like a justification for my actions, rather than genuine comfort. It was one day, while talking to another friend, a girl with whom I had less history but whom I considered sensible and honest, that the truth, the really painful truth, came to light. We were talking about Daniel, about how well he was doing in basketball, about how he had been affected by the breakup. Despite my behavior, it was still rumored that he had had a very hard time at first. And then my friend, with some discomfort, mentioned something she had been hearing. "Hey, Elena," she said, hesitating a little. "I do not know if I should tell you this, and I do not want to cause you problems, but I have heard things about Jessica and Daniel." My heart skipped a beat. "What things?" I asked, feeling the anxiety grip me again. And she told me. She told me that since the breakup, Jessica had been trying to get close to Daniel, that she would talk to him, send him messages, and worst of all, that she would speak badly of me to him, that she would tell him private things, details about my life or our relationship that only a best friend could know, presenting them in a negative way to make me look bad. That she was trying to sow doubts about my character while presenting herself as the loyal and understanding friend he needed at a difficult time. It was a blatant and cruel attempt to sabotage any possibility of reconciliation and, at the same time, to position herself as an option for Daniel. The news hit me like a bomb. I could not believe it at first. Jessica, my best friend, the person I trusted more than my own fiancé, was trying to steal the man I loved after helping me lose him. Disbelief quickly turned into blind fury. It was not just the betrayal of friendship, it was the brutal realization that I had been manipulated. That the doubts that had consumed me, that had destroyed my relationship, were not well-intentioned warnings, they were tools in Jessica's selfish plan to get what she wanted. All her advice, all her concern, it was all a sham, a twisted strategy born of envy and desire. I did not think twice. I had to see Jessica. I had to confront her with the truth of her vileness. I looked for her with rage boiling in my veins. When I found her, I confronted her directly, my voice trembling with contained anger. "What have you been telling Daniel?" I yelled without beating around the bush. "What do you think you are doing?" Jessica turned pale at first, surprised by my direct confrontation. She tried to deny it, she stammered excuses, but my fury cornered her. And then, with a look that finally revealed the envy and resentment she had always hidden, she let out the truth. "All right, you want to know," she said, her voice taking on a hardness I had never heard from her. "I always wanted him, Elena. I was always in love with Daniel. And I envied you. I envied that you had him." Her words were a dagger. "And yes, I wanted to separate you. I wanted you to realize that he was not so perfect that you had reasons to doubt. I knew that with your insecurities it would not take much. And it worked. She smiled, a cruel and victorious smile. Now that you broke up because of your own fault, and now that I have been there for him, telling him how badly you behaved, I do not think he will want to go back to you, and I am not going to let him. Now is my chance. Daniel is going to be mine. Her confession left me frozen. Not because of the surprise that she was in love with him, but because of the calculated malevolence of her plan. The person I trusted the most, the person who had advised me, had been my worst enemy, orchestrating my own self-destruction. Regret hit me with devastating force. I realized how foolish, how blind, how manipulable I had been. I had destroyed the best relationship of my life. I had hurt the man I loved, all for believing the lies of an envious friend. Tears flowed, this time from pure sadness and anger at myself. Without thinking, my hand rose and I slapped her. The slap echoed in the air, a physical release of the fury and regret that consumed me. Never again, I hissed, my voice choked with sobs. Never come near me again. You're a horrible person, Jessica. Get out of my life. I turned around and left, leaving the one I thought was my best friend alone with her confession and my slap. The confrontation with Jessica was a turning point. The blindfold fell from my eyes. I saw my mistake clearly and the manipulation I had been a victim of. And my only thought was Daniel. I had to talk to him. I had to tell him the truth, confess that I had been terribly wrong, that I was a fool to trust Jessica, that I still loved him and wanted to fix things. I desperately tried to contact him. Calls, text messages, emails. I sent him a torrent of apologies, chaotic explanations, pleas for him to listen to me. But there was no response. None. My calls went to voicemail. My messages went unanswered. Desperation grew with each failed attempt. He, quite rightly, had closed himself off. I had acted impulsively, based on lies and my own insecurities. And now I was facing the harshest consequence, the possibility that he wanted nothing more to do with me, that the damage was irreparable. The pain of having lost him, now compounded by the understanding of how unnecessary and stupid it had all been, consumed me completely. I felt like I was drowning in my own regret, not knowing if I would ever have the chance to try to amend my terrible mistake. After the confrontation with Jessica, my world was reduced to a single, desperate objective: to get Daniel back. I had seen with clarity the disaster I had caused, how stupidly I had sacrificed a real and valuable relationship for unfounded fears and the manipulation of an envious friend. I sent a torrent of messages to Daniel, full of apologies, chaotic explanations about Jessica, pleas for him to listen to me, but my phone remained silent. No response, no sign that he was willing to talk to me. Desperation grew with each day that passed without news from him. Finally, I could not take the uncertainty anymore. I had to see him. I had to talk to him face to face. I went to his dorm room on campus, my heart beating wildly in my chest. I knocked on the door. He opened it. Seeing him again after everything stirred a mix of emotions: relief at seeing him, pain for our separation, and immense anxiety for what was to come. The atmosphere was tense, heavy. His expression was serious. His eyes no longer reflected the love I remembered, but a quiet sadness and an unshakable firmness. Before I could unleash the avalanche of apologies and explanations I had rehearsed in my mind, he spoke first. His voice was calm, but each word fell like a slab. "I know why you're here, Elena," he said. "I know about Jessica. I know you made those things up or that you believed them because of her." He paused and looked at me with an intensity that pierced my soul. But that does not change things. I felt my world collapse. What? Why? But it was Jessica. I was a fool, I know, but... He gently raised a hand to stop me. "It is not just that, Elena. It is not just that you accused me of something I did not do. That was terrible, yes. But what really made me realize that we cannot be together is that you doubted me, that you chose to believe someone else, an outside person, over me, over us, over what we had." His gaze was one of disappointment, not anger. "A relationship is based on trust, Elena, an unbreakable trust. And you, at the crucial moment, showed that you did not have it in me, that you could doubt my character, my loyalty based on rumors and insinuations. He continued to explain his perspective with painful clarity. I cannot be with someone who, every time a doubt arises or someone says something about me, does not trust me enough to talk to me first or simply to dismiss the doubt completely. I need a partner who is by my side, who trusts me without reservation, as I trusted you. He assured me that he wanted nothing to do with Jessica, that he had seen who she was, but that did not mean he could get back with me. The damage to the fundamental trust in our relationship is too deep. I was glad to know that you want to change, Elena. I really was. It is a good step for you, but it is not going to be for me. His words shattered me. I understood, I perfectly understood his point, and I knew he was right. I had been a fool, manipulable, distrustful. I begged him, I pleaded, I promised I would change, that I would show him I could be trusted, but he stood firm. His decision was made. There would be no going back. I cried desperately, but he did not yield. I left his dorm room with my heart in pieces, my hope annihilated, but with the painful understanding that he was not the one to blame. The only one to blame was me. The following months were a slow and agonizing acceptance. I tried to move on, to focus on my studies, on life, but regret haunted me like a shadow. And then I saw him. I saw him with another woman on campus. She was beautiful and radiant, and it was evident that they were together, that they were happy. Anxiety and jealousy hit me hard. Even though Daniel had made it clear that it was over, my old insecurity resurfaced. I approached them, my voice trembling, questioning him. "How can you be with someone else?" I asked with a mixture of anger and pain. After everything we had. Daniel, with the calm of someone who had healed and moved on, looked at me with empathy, but without hesitation. "Elena," he said softly, "time has passed. Months. She was there for me. She helped me when I was down because of everything that happened." He was referring to the breakup, to my behavior. We met, and yes, we fell in love. He did not apologize for moving on. He did not let himself be dragged into the drama I was trying to create. Simply, with a tranquility that I did not possess, he said goodbye and left with her, leaving my desperation behind once again. Several more months passed. My life went on, but the sparkle was gone. And then the final news came. Daniel and that woman were getting married. The news hit me with the force of a train. I was in shock. The reality of what I had lost forever overwhelmed me. In a final desperate act, I went to his dorm room on campus only to find it empty. I knew he was probably at his parents' house preparing for the wedding. With a determination born of desperation and a fantasy that I could still fix it, I went to his parents' house. I arrived during a family dinner. I walked in. The dinner stopped. Everyone looked at me surprised. I went straight to Daniel, unleashing a torrent of emotions, telling him he could not marry someone else, that our love was the real one, that I was the love of his life. It was a spectacle driven by denial and regret. Daniel stood up, his face serious. He did not get angry. He did not humiliate me. He spoke to me with an empathy that acknowledged my pain, but with a firmness that left no room for doubt. "Elena," he said softly, "I understand how you feel. I know it is difficult. I also suffered a lot when we broke up." He looked into my eyes. "But I have moved on. I have healed. And you have to do it too." His words were gentle, but the truth they contained was unbreakable. "You will always have a place in my heart," he said, and for a second a foolish hope ignited in me. "But it is the place of someone I loved very much, someone who was important in my past. It is not the place of the person I want to marry, the person with whom I want to share my future." He repeated in a kinder way the fundamental reason why we could not be together, the lack of trust one had shown. I need a partner who trusts me without reservations. And unfortunately, what happened showed us that we could not have that. My tears flowed again, but this time, despite the pain, I felt that I completely understood. There was no going back. He had found the happiness that I, with my own hands, had destroyed for us. I accepted defeat. I accepted reality. I cried, nodding. I said goodbye with a hug that felt like a final farewell to an important part of my life. Then I left. The following months were a mix of pain and acceptance. I saw pictures of his wedding. He looked radiant, happy. My own graduation, the achievement I had worked so hard for, felt empty, tainted by regret. I thought about him every day, about what we could have been. The lesson was cruel, but I learned it. My own insecurities, magnified by the toxicity of a friend, had led me to sabotage the best relationship of my life. I understood that trust is the pillar of everything and that by breaking it, I had broken something irreparable. My regret was a constant companion, but over time that painful lesson became a guide. It taught me the importance of self-confidence, of choosing your friends wisely, and above all, of valuing and trusting the good people who come into your life. Life went on for Daniel, full of happiness, and for me, full of the consequences of my own decisions, but with the hope of applying the hard lessons learned to build a better future.